Hello and welcome back to Nizhny Novgorod in Russia, where after the conclusion of the pre-game press conference for the big final on Sunday, we have with us Basketball Champions League CEO Patrick Comninos for a media roundtable. Welcome, Mr. Comninos. We will first ask Mr. Comninos kindly for an opening statement, and then the floor will open to questions from the accredited media on Zoom. May I please remind all accredited media that in order to be able to ask a question, they will need to raise their hands, virtually, of course. So, without further ado, let's start with an opening statement. Mr. Comninos, will you please be kind enough to give us your thoughts on the event and set the agenda for today? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon from my side. This is always a great occasion on the Saturday between the semifinals and the finals to have this discussion with representatives of the media. Usually we enjoy having this opportunity to do it in person. Obviously, in today's world, we have all adjusted to what is this new environment, where we all have to adapt and operate in this manner. But from my side, this is always an event that is meant to be relaxing and open and interactive and dynamic in the questions that they are asked. It's meant to be very informal. You can see it also from my casual attire. I do not want this to become a very formalistic environment, but one where we can really have an open discussion. From our side, this is without a doubt our pinnacle event for our 2020-2021 season. A season that we all acknowledge has been a very challenging one when it comes to organizing any sport competition, especially when we now speak about international sport competitions, where we have to integrate the various protocols and requirements from a number of countries that are participating in our competition, and we have seen the tremendous challenges in organizing such an event. From our side, we have approached this season with a clear intention for it to become one of our best ever, and we're very happy that we have reached this stage of the competition, having, of course, made the necessary adjustments in our formats, in our planning, in collaboration with the clubs, always keeping in mind the need for the games and for the results to be decided on the court. This has always been our primary focus when approaching this competition. And we are now here in Nizhny Novgorod for this Final 8 event. Final 8, contrary to a Final 4, because of the calendar restrictions and the fact that in the new format that we have put in place, this additional layer of quarterfinals was not possible. So, of course, we are once again operating from a Final 8 point of view. So far, and I'm sure that this is going to be discussed later on, the event has been extremely well organized, and I need to thank from the outset our hosts here, the local government of Nizhny Novgorod and the club of Nizhny, and they have made tremendous efforts, and these are even more appreciated at this stage of the competition where Nizhny is no longer participating. It actually got eliminated at the very first game of the competition, and we know that that was a terrible disappointment for our hosts, but the fact that they are continuing to deliver at an even higher and more professional level goes a long way to demonstrate their commitment and their desire to make this the best final event ever. And we are on the road to having such an outcome so far. And again, we still have 2 games left in the competition, so we acknowledge that we're not there yet. But so far, all the messages that we are receiving from the clubs that are here in Russia or that were here in Russia at the outset, from the social media response that this competition is generating, and from the images that are produced in a very high standard of TV production, we feel very comfortable that this is going to be one of the very best events ever organized. So it's our pleasure to be here. It's my personal pleasure to have the chance to discuss with representatives of the media, albeit in this very unique and impersonal environment. But as always, I will do my best to try to respond and give as much of an informative answer as possible. So thank you once again, and I think we are now ready to take certain questions.
Thank you, Mr. Comninos. We'll first take some questions from the field here before we proceed to questions from Zoom. Our first question here from the room would be: you're about to crown you're about to conclude the fifth season tomorrow. So usually 5 years is a milestone we set to reflect a little bit on what happened previously and what's going to happen for the next 5 years. So if you take a moment to reflect a bit on what has happened thus far, was the development of the competition in line with your initial expectations 5 years ago? Did some areas exist where you exceeded the goals, or on the contrary, were there some areas that you were not so happy with and you wish to focus on during the next 5 years?
Thank you. No, from our side, taking into consideration the very dynamic and volatile environment that exists in European basketball, our first, let's say, milestone was the first 3 years. When we started the competition back in 2016, already envisaging 5 years ahead seemed like a long way. So we acknowledgingly looked for the first 3 years, which was all about setting up the credibility of the competition. Again, it's a very young competition. It remains a very young competition. We're only doing our very first baby steps in this direction. But for us, the first key pit stop was after year 3, where again we had set certain targets, certain KPIs when it came to the credibility of the competition, the penetration in the social media environment, the acknowledgement from the fans about what the BCL represents, sending a very clear message about our values and our principles when it comes to sporting results and inclusiveness of our competition. And at that 3-year mark, we had already anticipated that we would go to that next step. And for us, that next step was going out into the market, seeking equity investors, because we believe that this is the only way to continue to grow our competition, not exclusively on a financial point of view, but on a know-how point of view, on an expertise in the marketplace point of view. And as you all know, we have concluded this important step in our growth, and everything was going according to plan. But then, of course, COVID came our way, and we are certainly not the only competition that has been impacted by COVID. The entire sports industry has been impacted by this terrible pandemic. So for the last 2 seasons, our priorities have been, I have to confess, a little bit readjusted. Season 4 was for us all about crowning a champion. As we know, BCL is the only European club competition international competition that did crown a champion last year, and we went through tremendous efforts in trying to do this, which we did with the crowning of Burgos as the champions in Athens last fall. And then season 5 was all about operating and surviving, in a sense, in this new environment, and trying to retain some of our core principles and trying to continue our trajectory towards growth and improvement. And this is what we're very proud of at this stage of the competition. I believe that the new format that we were quick to adjust to allowed us a level of flexibility and a level of breathing room, not only for us, but for our shareholders, the leagues, who are an integral part in the growth and the development of club basketball in Europe. So we needed to have this very good collaboration with them so that our calendars and theirs could be aligned in view of finishing the season. So we are extremely pleased of the steps that have been taken, but of course, as already said, we are still at a very early stage of our competition, and if I was to look ahead, I think it's now all about solidifying the position of the Basketball Champions League as a top-tier European competition. I think the level of interest that this competition generates, the level of commitment from some of Europe's best clubs is significant, and we are very enthusiastic about the role that the Basketball Champions League can play in reshaping the landscape of European club basketball, even more so than it has done over the last years. We have to remember that in these 5 seasons, we have had more than 30, I think it's about 38 different countries represented into the Basketball Champions League, and more than 130 different clubs. And that is part of our DNA. This is part of our vision, and this is part of our philosophy, that the Basketball Champions League should be a competition that represents the entire ecosystem of European basketball. So we will continue to work in that direction. We will be announcing a number of decisions over the next weeks when it comes to our commercial growth, when it comes to the way we will enter into the marketplace in terms of seeking new commercial media and sponsorship partnerships, when we talk about the competition format for the coming season. So there's a lot of work that has already been done in view of continuing this growth path. But of course, now and for the next couple of days, our focus remains here in Nizhny Novgorod and our attempt to crown the 5th champion of the Basketball Champions League.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more question from the floor before we proceed with questions on Zoom. Go ahead, please.
You touched upon this by saying this was a troubled season with the COVID and everything. How happy are you that you're right here in Russia, that you have fans on the stands, and you're able to organize such a tournament? How hard it is to organize a tournament with fans these days?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's hard, but I would say it's suddenly unusual. Speaking with teams, speaking with referees, speaking with TV operators, speaking with the entire community, when the first game started, and it was actually the home team, and the capacity of almost 60% in the arena as per the regulations allowed here in Russia. We all acknowledge that these were novel and unheard of sounds. Actually, people were in the stands cheering for their teams, and for many of us, this was a very novel, or let's say, a sound that had not been heard for quite some time. So the level of difficulty, I think, is linked to all the COVID measures that have to be taken into consideration. I think in today's world, organizing events in very strict protocols take an additional operational toll on everyone, but we have extremely good co-organizers here with us in Nizhny and in the local government. So that part has been relatively very smooth. Let's not forget also that in this country, games have been played with spectators for quite some time now, and that, of course, allows everybody to have a very good feel and understanding. And in the end of the day, this is also one of the reasons we are here. For us, concluding the season in front of spectators is of significant relevance. So the choice of Nizhny Novgorod was also fulfilled or concluded, knowing that we would have the opportunity to welcome fans in the arena, which remains an essential component of a live event.
Thank you. We will now proceed with questions from Zoom, from the credit media on Zoom. We'll first go to Begum Unai from Trend Basket. Begum, please unmute your mic and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, do you hear me?
So we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So it's great to see fans. First of all, it's really great to see the fans in the stands somehow this season. My question is a little bit about the financial side. So we know basketball Champions League is associated with some financial benefits to the clubs over the last 5 years since the beginning. And over the years, there are increases in the prices and the location of it. There are always improvements. And for the next, from the next season and the next seasons, should we expect increases, improvements in this financial side, financial benefits to the clubs?
Thank you. From our side, in this very, very difficult environment, our priority, of course, has been to be able to maintain the same prize pool that has been offered to our clubs. Taking into consideration the significant impact that COVID has had on the entire sports industry, the fact that we have been able to keep our commitments and promises to the clubs and to provide them with the amounts that had been stipulated and promised in our competition regulations, both last season and this season, is already a great achievement. Going around the European marketplace, we know and we acknowledge that many other competitions in different sports have not been able to fulfill that commitment because, again, sponsorship or TV revenue have significantly decreased. But from our side, our commitment has remained unchanged, and we have been able to deliver as initially planned. Now, looking into the future, this is part of our job to continue to assess, to continue to evaluate, and to take the right decisions about the future. Obviously, as our competition grows, we want the benefits for the clubs to continue to grow as well. And these are not always directly linked to financial prizes. I think it's not an issue about money alone. It's an issue about the growth of the brand, the exposure that the clubs receive in our competition, the exposure that the players receive in our competition, the overall collaboration that we have with our clubs. So what we can certainly say is that the monetary prize that we have anticipated over the next and very supportive of our clubs, but on top of that, we will continue to work hand in hand with them in order to reach the ultimate results that all of us want, which is a competition of a very high standard.
Thank you. We will proceed with some more questions on Zoom, although we've received a bunch of them via chat. So Carmelo Palacios from Diario de Burgos is asking, as the CEO of the BCL, you always talk about merit, sporting merits. Is the growth of San Pablo Burgos the perfect example of what this competition's values?
I've said this before, and I will say it again, and it's a clear yes. The answer to that, I think Burgos is a very good example of what a European competition should provide to its clubs. I've always said this before. The primary focus for all clubs is and should be their domestic competition. This is where they develop week in, week out. This is where they give opportunities to young players to come out because, again, in the ecosystem of basketball, we need the production lines, we need the young national teams to have players grow into the senior teams. So we need this entire environment to operate in unison. European competition should be the bonus. It should be the icing on the cake. It should be an annex to the domestic league, and it should provide only benefits, not costs and problems to the clubs. Playing in Europe should be a reward for a successful domestic league season, and playing in Europe should only come with added benefits and no costs. So this is what we have always tried to do from the outset of our creation. And San Pablo Burgos is a very good example of that. We are talking about a team that earned its place into the Basketball Champions League, first of all, because of its ranking in the ACB. Then, last year, it entered the qualification round of the Basketball Champions League. Some very impressive games against Kiev from Ukraine, if I remember correctly, back in September. And then they entered the regular season, going all the way to winning the competition last year in a very unique, record-setting season where it took them more than 365 days between qualifying and winning the trophy. So this is the epitome of our vision and our message. And then, of course, San Pablo Burgos came back as champions, also very highly ranked in the ACB. And we're very pleased to see clubs like Burgos or like Tenerife that have been regular participants in our competitions grow within their own league, within their own competition. And for us, we take tremendous pleasure when we see this. Sometimes it saddens us when we see teams that play long and costly European seasons and then they cannot be as competitive in their domestic season. So for us, Burgos is a very good example of the trajectory that we are talking about and about the possibilities that the Basketball Champions League offers to clubs like Burgos. On a final point on the opportunities, I will mention something that I sometimes demonstrates the relevance of this. In our first season, back in 2016, 2017, in the summer of 2016, we only had one application from the ACB. At the time, it was Iberostar Tenerife, who had finished, if I'm not mistaken, 9th in the ACB that year. It was the only Spanish club that expressed interest in playing in the Basketball Champions League. Over the years, the successes of clubs like Tenerife, clubs like Murcia, clubs like Burgos, clubs like Zaragoza that have all made it to the Final Four of the Basketball Champions League have demonstrated the impact that our competition can have. And from the one club that we have applied in the Basketball Champions League in 2016. Last year, we had 9 applications from clubs from the ACB. And that, to me, is a very good demonstration of the interest that is generated and the exposure that is offered via our competition. And that, for us, is the most important reward.
Thank you very much. For the next question, we'll go to Predrag. Predrag, can I please ask you to unmute your mic and ask your question? Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
First of all, congratulations and thanks that you are guarding European sports model with the BCL league. And I have a 2-part question. This season, Igokea was the only representing this region in BCL, and they said a lot of great words and they were praising competition and relationship with everyone from BCL. Are you in touch with them? Are they coming back? And the second part, Igokea is showing that BCL teams are competitive with not only Euro Cup teams. Behind them in Adriatic League are 2 Euro Cup teams, Cedrita Olympia and Mornar. And then last night in semifinals of playoff, they beat one EuroLeague team, Red Star. The thing, except the quality of Igokea and the rising in BCL, are the calendar and the things that you adjust calendar made to clubs and the players opportunity to be better in this season. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You mentioned last night's success. Congratulations to Igokea. It's their first ever victory in the ABA League playoffs against Red Star Belgrade. So obviously, congratulations to a club that has had a very successful season with us here in Europe, and we are always very pleased to see this sort of progress and these sort of results. On the first part of the question, we are in contact with the Gocek, like we are with dozens of clubs around Europe as we plan our next season. Of course, we cannot take any decisions yet. We need to wait and see the results of the domestic competitions in each and every country, because, as already said, access into the Basketball Champions League is exclusively dependent on the performance of the teams in the domestic competition. But to link this to the second part of the question, for us, this is essential, and we take a great deal of pleasure when we see our clubs remain successful in the domestic competitions and try to have this, let's say, parallel success in both the Basketball Champions League and their domestic competition. This year, our changed format and our approach to a scheduling that for us makes a lot of sense. It allows for teams to have less games, but games of much more intensity. We do not have such a long regular season, but we have now moved into a format where every game counts, and there are no games where teams can relax and not pay full attention. And that is the way to promote the competition. It is the way to promote the clubs, and it is the way to promote the players. So we believe that what we currently offer to our clubs is a great exposure. It is a standard of competition that does not overwhelm their calendar. They continue to focus on the domestic league. As I already said, this is and should be the priority for all clubs, and European competition should provide them with excitement, with intensity, with the opportunity to promote themselves and the players, and the opportunity to generate revenue, because selling tickets or selling sponsorship to games that are of extreme importance, relevance, this has added value. So we believe that not just with the Gocek, but with many other clubs, we have built this sort of relationship that justifies our approach and validates, first and foremost, the position of the clubs.
Thank you. Next question is from Alexei. Alexei, can I please ask you to unmute your mic and ask your question?
Yes, my name is Alexei Hitruk. I represent Sportbox Youth Agency from Russia. And one question for you, Patrick. I saw all the games in this competition, and I suppose that in different games, different teams and players were a bit nervous maybe in this competition, maybe because of that the Final Four is very important for them. They have mistakes in rather simple situations. I mean, shots, passes, even rebounds. But upon the whole, are you satisfied with the level of basketball in this Final Four? Thanks.
I think it goes without saying that the more intense a game is, the more that there is at stake. And that's not just in the BCL. I think that's in all sports and competitions. Players are nervous. Mistakes are sometimes made, and sometimes the level of the quality is not what one would expect. But that having been said, the sentiment that we have is that the games that we have seen here in Nizhny Novgorod have been extremely exciting games, have been taken to the wire, as we say. We even had a game go to overtime. So, from a fan perspective, yes, this is an event where Everybody is nervous about losing. Losing often means great disappointment, and therefore there's a lot at stake. So I would say that we are very pleased with the intensity of these games, the excitement that they created. In all of our quarterfinals, the teams that were up at halftime ended up losing the game. That for us is a close game. It's a competitive game. And at the end of the day, these events will be remembered by the results and by the great images of the teams on the court. And that to us is of extreme relevance.
Thank you. Next question is from Valia Pilianidi from sport24.gr. The question is, due to the pandemic, you had to make some changes in the playoffs format. How successful would you say this decision to change the format was? To change the format from to 4 groups of 4 teams each?
You know, this necessary change, which was adapting, as was rightly said, our traditional format from 4 groups of 8 into 8 groups of 4, gave us the opportunity to examine something else. And I believe we were very good at turning a crisis into a blessing. And having the chance to examine this new format, of course, allowed us to have a proper evaluation of this. And the results have been overwhelming when it comes to the interest that these games generate, when it comes to the excitement for teams that have everything riding on that specific game. It's unfortunate that such games were not able to be watched by fans in a live environment, because that would have created tremendous reaction in the stands, we are confident. And as we move ahead into the next year, we will be examining this option for a continuation into the future, of course, with some adjustments, but we have seen that there are a lot of benefits. The biggest one, especially in the regular season, was the fact that by not having teams play continuously and endlessly, we were given the opportunity to give some, as I said before, breathing space. We do not know what the situation is going to be with regards to the pandemic, the travel, the access of fans into the arenas next year. So, of course, we have to take that into consideration as well. But in addition, from a purely competition format point of view, we saw a lot of benefits in a competition that has, I would say, a shorter regular season and then a transition into top 16 and quarterfinals in a much more exciting manner. And as I said, we are examining that along with other alternatives for our next season, always with some necessary adjustments. But this is a format that we have seen makes a lot of sense and allows clubs to treat the European season as an annex, as I said before, to their national championship. Focus is the national championship. The main season for the teams is the national championship, and we are here to provide an environment where clubs can progress, develop, and grow in parallel.
Thank you. The next question is from Kiko Martin. Kiko, can I please ask you to unmute your phone? Thank you. Your mic.
Hi, first of all, congratulations, Patrick, for the great challenge of organize this competition this difficult year. As you will say, you will know, in Spain, many clubs would like to join this competition. And I would like to know if Burgos got the title. Could the ACB have one more spot for the next season, for one more team?
Thanks for the question, and congratulations once again to our Spanish friends. It's the third final in a row where we have a Spanish team participating, and I think again this is validation of the depth and the success of the ACB. Now, going back to your specific question, the answer is no. Burgos would not offer, let's say, the ACB an additional spot. In any case, Burgos would have qualified irrespective of the final result tomorrow, currently ranked in the top 6 positions in the ACB, so Burgos would be entitled to play in the BCL next year, whether they win or not the competition. So winning the title does not automatically grant to the ACB another space. In principle, we will have 4 teams from the ACB next year.
Thank you. We actually stay in Spain because the next question is from Eduardo Sell. Eduardo, please go unmute your microphone and go ahead.
Hi, Patrick. Congratulations again for the amazing season and the great performance in the Final 8. I was going to ask more or less in the direction as Kiko asked, but before you talked about the growth of and the willingness of many of the Spanish teams willing to play in BCL, starting from 1 to the record of 9 petitions. I would like to know, from your point of view, how big or how important is the Spanish market for BCL in order to develop and continue growing and establish itself as a top-tier competition in European level?
Thank you. I keep receiving congratulations, but obviously I do so on behalf of an amazing team that we have here in Russia, and an amazing team of collaborators that are working day and night all year long. So I am just the recipient, but I think it's important to acknowledge a tremendous effort that is made by everyone at the office and outside. And this season, I can confirm, has not been easy for everyone in the office. So we take these congratulations at heart, and we're very appreciative of this. Speaking now of the ACB, it is well known, it is well established that the ACB is the most competitive league in European basketball. It is the league that has the greater depth in the competition. So we know that any of their teams would be competitive in most European environments. So it goes without saying that there is a relevance for us in this market, and from day one we have worked very closely in developing this collaboration. I will confess it was not necessarily easy at the outset for a number of reasons. As mentioned already, we only had one participating team at the beginning, but over the 5 years, the collaboration with the ACB has grown to one that I would call a very successful partnership. In the last General Assembly of the Basketball Champions League, Antonio Martin, the president of the ACB, was unanimously elected into the board of the Basketball Champions League. So for the first time, we have the ACB represented into the board of the Basketball Champions League, and that again goes a long way to show the sort of partnership that we have in place. So the market is not relevant just for the Basketball Champions League, it's relevant for the entire ecosystem, and we will do our utmost to protect that ecosystem. We will continue to work very closely, not just with the ACB, but with all other leagues, in trying to find the best scenario about developing the leagues. Right now, the Basketball Champions League is the only club competition in Europe that puts value into the results of the domestic leagues. And this is very much appreciated by our domestic leagues. They are all shareholders of the Basketball Champions League. So the fact that we are here week in, week out, putting value to the final standings of the domestic competition, making it relevant if a team is 6th or 8th or 9th or 10th, that I think is the only way to continue to support our partners. And again, the ACB is a very significant partner of ours, and we're always very thankful for that collaboration.
Thank you. We will now move on to some questions we received prior to the start of this media roundtable. The first one would be, this event here in Nizhny Novgorod is the first time in the history of the competition where the host team is not among the 4 semi-finalists. Despite this, the attendance in the arena is quite impressive. So does this mean, in your opinion, that the competition has maybe reached the maturity required to maybe envisage hosting its season-ending tournament in a neutral venue?
Very good question. Very good question, because this is something that we have been deliberating about in the office extensively over the last years, and I think the question touches on the same debates that we have linked to the growth and the maturity of our competition. As we all know, when we started the Basketball Champions League 5 years ago, we were aware, we were conscious that it's not easy to go and organize such an event in any city. I've said this many times, there are very, very few global or international club competitions that can attract fans irrespective of the participating teams. And I would say they are a very short handful, UEFA Champions League, NFL Super Bowl, and I'm talking about team sports. I'm not talking about now the Wimbledon final or Formula One. I'm talking about team sports that play a final where neutral fans are expected. And there are not that many out there, and we are very conscious of that. So when we started the competition, we needed to go to an environment where the host would safeguard the level of interest that we wanted, and that's how we went to Tenerife the first year. That's how we went to Athens the next year. That's how we went to Antwerp the third year. But Antwerp for us was a catalyst in that it was the first time that the host was not playing in the final. Both in Tenerife and in Athens, the home team was in the final. So, of course, that guaranteed a full arena and a very excited crowd. But in Antwerp, the final did not include the home team. But we were very impressed by the fact that we had 17,000 fans in the arena in the Sportpaleis in Antwerp. And that already forced us or posed the question, okay, if these sort of crowds are going to be interested in coming to a BCL final, how do we approach this for the future? Of course, the 2 subsequent events following Antwerp were played within the COVID pandemic environment, so difficult to assess them. Last year, we went to Athens, but without spectators. This year, we are here in Nizhny, and we do have a small percentage of spectators allowed. But of course, the fact that even though the host is out of the competition, we still have local fans interested in attendance. That also goes to show the thirst that exists out there for live sports, but also the product that the BCL brings into the stage in order to be able to offer to the fans something unique. So our approach regarding the future is one where, yes, we will be examining neutral venues. We will be embarking in partnerships, no longer with a host club, but with the leagues and federations in different countries in order to develop an environment that is going to be welcoming the Basketball Champions League and will no longer be dependent on the participation of the host team. We believe we've reached that stage of maturity and we are ready to take that next leap and try that direction.
Thank you. The next question we received prior to the start of the Media Roundtable.
You mentioned numerous times the images and the TV production. How important are communications and social media as a development key in all of your strategy?
I'm sure attendees will understand if you need a drop of water before.
It's okay. It's okay. My collaborators accuse me of speaking too much, so they're always very quick to bring me some water to make me shut up. So this is essential. The event, especially in today's COVID environment, necessitates a stage that is formed by the show, the TV production, and the exposure that is generated through social media. So that is an imperative component to the success of any competition. And we are extremely pleased with what is being produced here. I can safely say that this is the best TV production that has ever been seen in a Basketball Champions League final. And the best social media response that we have received. And that is a great compliment to all the people behind their laptops that are working endless hours in trying to deliver this sort of content to all the fans that are interested in our competition. So it is a great component, but it is in line with everything that we have been doing over the last 5 years. I wouldn't say that it comes to us as a great surprise. It obviously comes to us as a great pleasure, but this is a testament to the work that our competitions team has been doing over the course of the 5 years, setting specific milestones and reaching them every single year. We are the #1 club competition in European basketball on social media with 2.5 million followers, and therefore that is the outcome of the hard work that is being done by everyone in the office and by the acknowledgement that in today's world this is an imperative medium to communicate with the fans, and this is something that is appreciated by the fans, by the teams, by the press officers of the teams that are given the necessary tools to work with. It's highly appreciated by the players who see the level of promotion that they receive via the Basketball Champions League. So yes, this is an essential part, and we're very pleased to see it reach these sort of impressive numbers.
Thank you. The next of these questions we received has to do with the financial aspect, and the BCL in that respect has been slowly but surely growing since its inception, especially since the US investors came on board. So the question is, can we expect further investments, and which would probably be associated with an increase in the prize money for the clubs, and could that in turn eventually convince 1 or 2 big name clubs, in quotes, to join the BCL?
I wouldn't say that increasing the prize pool is the only component that a club looks at. We live in a very unique and paradoxical environment in European basketball, which is not driven by the conventional business models. When we see the millions that the top teams that play in the EuroLeague lose every year, one cannot say that the issue is all about giving clubs more money. And therefore, that would be a slippery slope to enter into, to just increase the prize money for the winner for the sake of increasing it, when at the same time so many teams are conscientiously losing millions every year. So for us, the whole principle is about offering an environment that allows clubs to grow, to develop, to get promoted, and if successful, to earn revenue that has a significant impact on their budget. And this is why we believe that the sort of financial model that we have aligns these interests. So the investment that is done on a daily and annual basis in the Basketball Champions League is not meant to just throw money on the table in order to attract clubs as such. It is an investment meant to develop awareness, to develop exposure, to develop opportunities for clubs, and at the end increase the club equity value, because this is how clubs are measured and this is how clubs are generating more revenue on themselves. So for us, the BCL path is one where we hope to be able to continue to grow, to continue to become attractive and welcoming for some of Europe's top clubs, something that we saw very vocally last summer. And we believe that this is the right direction to go. Any money that is invested in the direction of adding value to the content of the Basketball Champions League and not to just attract clubs as such.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Right now, talking about the European landscape, we have 4 European competitions going on. You think that this is something that is sustainable? What's your general take on the future of European club events?
I have said this many times. One of the key missions of the Basketball Champions League when we started the competition, and many of you have heard me say this before, it is to change the landscape of European club basketball. You've heard the analogy between football and basketball and the discrepancy between the popularity of basketball and its market share. This is becoming more and more evident as years go by, and I read more and more articles about the impossible model to sustain European club basketball when we see that the top teams in the continent are losing 30 million euros each in a budget that is not more than 45 million. So that is a worrisome statistic. That's why I said, with regards to the previous question, that this is not an orthodox business environment. It's not an environment where somebody invests and looks at a return on investment and sees the growth of the company. This is an environment that is artificially inflated. This is an environment where football clubs have an ease at transferring money to the basketball sector of their club in order to win titles. This is an environment where, as I sometimes call them, owners that are willing to act in a crazy manner, that does not fulfill business principles. And this is admirable as long as they continue to do it. But, European basketball has dozens of stories that historic clubs, and I'm not going to start listing them, all disappeared the moment the owner decided to pull the plug, because there is no organic growth, there is no systematic development of business opportunities, there are no new investments coming in, and it's difficult to attract new investments when the basketball ecosystem is becoming very introvert. The more we close, the more we do not give opportunities to new clubs and to new investors, the more difficult it will become. So we are proposing a very different model. We are proposing a model that we want clubs to be extrovert, to go out into the market, to seek investment, to bring in new capital into the competition, and if they are successful in doing so and building a good team, to then qualify and fight for the best positions in their league and then qualification into Europe. So we acknowledge the fallacy and the problem in the European landscape. We acknowledge that 4 competitions are probably 2 competitions too many, and we acknowledge that something needs to be done about it. FIBA and the leagues over the last 5 years have invested considerably in order to be able to have a seat at the table, in order to be able to raise these questions, and in order to be able to drive this discussion, hence the statement about changing the landscape of European basketball. And this is something that is done very conscientiously. This is done with a long-term vision of working with the leagues, working with the federations, working with the clubs in order to find the right model that at the end is not going to establish an environment where the entire market share is below 100 million, which is by no means representative of what the commercial value of club basketball should be.
Thank you. The next question is one that is somewhat related, and it's actually a question that we received from several people. Several people have asked whether there are new clubs you are targeting to join the BCL, and if you cannot disclose any discussions you might be having, if you could at least let us know which regions or markets you want to focus your attention on.
Can I give like the first letter, the third letter of the... no, kidding aside. Look, for us, it's not so much as attracting clubs. Of course, we have discussions with clubs in Europe the whole time. For us, it's about informing clubs. It's about giving clubs opportunities to select a competition that makes sense for them and rewards their on-court results and success. So we are continuing in the same trajectory. I wouldn't say targeting specific clubs. We have clubs with whom we continue to have discussions. We acknowledge that certain markets are more challenging than others. This is a fact. We acknowledge the fact that here in Russia, we are not always VTB is not always represented in the best possible manner in the Basketball Champions League, and this is why we are extremely grateful for the collaboration we have with Nizhny Novgorod, a club that is actually now 5th in the VTB. Testament again, I think, to the future that clubs can have by balancing this European and national competition. But for us, we are now in an environment where clubs might have a choice to make or might not have a choice to make, seeing how other competitions are selecting a model of an introvert nature, offering additional licenses and therefore excluding clubs that might have performed very well in their domestic competition. So again, we are talking about different philosophies. We are talking about a different approach to the respect that ought to be given to the results of the domestic league. So for us, our discussions with the leagues, our partners, and with the clubs continues, and we are extremely optimistic about the future, not just of our competition, but of European basketball as a whole. We believe that the time has come for certain key decisions to be made, and we look forward to being part of that.
Thank you. We have one final question, and it's from Carmelo Palacios. When you visited Burgos back in 2020 for the first time, Did you have an inkling maybe that the team, the club would go on to perform as it did over the past 2 years in this competition?
If only I had a crystal ball in being able to predict these things. No, the reason I visited Burgos is the same reason I visit most of our new clubs, if not all of them. Obviously, this last year, this has not been possible because of COVID, but Burgos is a club that, as mentioned earlier, does fit very well into our ethos and DNA. It is a club that broke all records when it came to attendances. Before I visited them, they had just broken the record for attendance in a qualification game in a club competition with 10,000 fans in the game against Kiev. So this was a club that deserved our attention, and we are very, very happy to see that our collaboration has allowed them to be so successful. I wouldn't say I was a visionary, and I wouldn't say I brought them specific luck. Otherwise, I will get many, many invitations to start traveling to all the clubs in the fall and bring them good luck.
Yeah, I'm sure this was not the purpose of today's media roundtable. So we don't have any more questions, Mr. Comninos. So I wonder if you have a closing statement, or maybe you wish to mention something that was not mentioned during the course.
No, it's always a pleasure to have this opportunity. As I said again, let's hope that the next time we do this, it will be in live and to have the chance to meet in person. But from our side, once again, a big thanks to our gracious host, the government of Nizhny Novgorod and the club. And we are very excited for what should be a great day of basketball tomorrow. The third place game, once again, featuring Saragossa against the French club, as was the case in Athens in the last Final 8. And then a final between Burgos and Pinar Karšiaga with a few records on the line. Are we going to have the first repeat champion, or are we going to have the first Turkish champion? So stay tuned and get your answers tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Comninos, and thanks to everybody who attended this media roundtable. Thank you very much. This concludes the session. Bye-bye.